think I'm live. I'm going to get Jasmine in here. Hi. I haven't been live in such a... I honestly think Jasmine and I went live around... Oh, are we still here? Yeah. Last April.
Hold on, you're seeing my feet.
Beautiful.
There we go. Hi.
Hey. I was just saying, I feel like the last time you and I went live was around CP
Yeah,
Day.
it was, well, I think we've just done it once, right? It was like, I feel like it was a long time ago, but maybe it was
Yeah,
just
we did it
last year.
once. It was, yeah, it was a long time ago. I think it was last year because it would have been so fresh 2 years ago. I don't know if I was doing like any kind of really even talking about it at that point. I think I actually shared that Presley had cerebral palsy. She was diagnosed in September, and then in March is when I shared it. So it wasn't like I waited 6 months till I had like
Yeah,
my footing, so to speak, underneath me to understand like what was going on.
yeah,
And so I'm
yeah.
happy to do this with you. And I feel like you and I just need to have
I
a
know, we still
drink one
haven't
night
met. We still haven't met in real
and meet
life.
and talk.
Um, I'm
That's okay.
realizing, am I like upside down on your view? Okay, hold on.
Yes.
I haven't done a live since I did it with you, so I'm really not good at these things. Let me just try to share. I'll
We're
just
just
flip
figuring
my
it out.
phone because then, yeah, might not be the best
Okay.
angle this way, but we'll do it this way. So we're both the same viewpoint
Whatever.
for everybody. Yeah,
I love it. Yeah, so we can just like hop right into it, and then maybe you and I can like do a call after just so that we
yeah,
can kind of reconnect. But for those of you who don't know Jasmine, she's from Regina, and she is a dog mom,
Thank you.
and she
I love
lives
that
with,
shout out.
yes, you are a mom. And she lives with spastic
Yeah,
diplegia. It's
yeah,
diplegia, right? When am I always saying that right? Okay. Cerebral palsy, and that's the same diagnosis as my daughter. So when Presley first got diagnosed, when I was hashtag searching cerebral palsy and trying to like find people with the same diagnosis, Jasmine was one of the very first accounts that I followed, and like kind of crept on. And then I remember messaging you, and we got to connect and just chat a little bit. And I felt so relieved after talking to somebody. I was like, wow, this woman is like incredible and everything is fine. Like it just made me so much more calm. So if you want to like tell us a little bit about like what you do now, and then maybe dive into like when you were little, like when did you realize that you were disabled? Because I'm sure you didn't know anything different. And so I'm sure there's like a pinpoint
yeah. I
moment
was
for you, I'm
trying to
assuming,
think about that a
ish.
little bit. It's funny, sometimes I don't think much about like the past until people bring things up or ask questions, right? It's been so long. So I am in my 30s. I'm 33. And was born with CP, even though I wasn't diagnosed until I was about 2. Which is typical, I think, for a lot of kids with cerebral palsy, especially if it's mild, to not be diagnosed until a little bit later when, certain development milestones aren't being hit. Um, but I definitely was
Yeah.
was born with my cerebral palsy. I mean, I was born 3 months early. I was only 3 pounds, so very premature and just underdeveloped. Not really a specific reason that I ended up with cerebral palsy. Obviously, there was a brain injury at some point, either before, or sorry, yeah, before, during, or after birth. But for me, it's not really like a
Yes. Yeah.
specific, lack of oxygen or stroke or anything like that. It just kind of happened. But yeah, my family did not know that I had CP until I was about 2 years old. And I think part of the signs of that was just that my younger brother was actually just developing quicker than me, walking before me, doing all these things. So it was like my parents were like, "What's going on here? Our younger child is
Right.
moving past in a quicker pace." So that's kind of what started them to look
Yes.
into what was going on with me, and yeah, that whole journey started there.
Okay. Yeah. So Presley was also diagnosed at 2 years
Yeah.
old, or at 18 months, I guess. Um, but for me, I had no like comparison game because I always thought because she was premature, I was always going back to like corrected age. So like at corrected age, I thought she was like totally like typical. And then when I got that diagnosis, I was like, I've never heard of the term CP before. So that was the first time I'd ever
Yeah.
heard the words, let alone like walking into like navigating like and really having my eyes
Yeah.
opened to the disabled world,
Yeah.
to be honest. Like I I've lived my whole life like so like unaware and really honestly ableist, and I still find myself being very ableist at moments. But I wouldn't have that, like I wouldn't be able to step back and see that had I not been
Yeah.
like in
And
this
I
position.
think,
So
the
so
way that you found out about Presley's cerebral palsy was um, a little more sudden, I think, right? And unexpected. And like for my family, they
mhm,
obviously had suspected some things. And it's still a shock to get that diagnosis, obviously, and to be told that your child
yeah.
probably won't walk, probably won't, be very independent. But I know for you, and I don't know if you want to share it today, but your experience was a little more unexpected, I think, and that I think that probably um, just took you back even more than what it would have been for my parents at the time.
Yeah, like long story short, we were just following up with the NICU team, and one day I just asked like, why isn't she pulling to stand? She was 18 months at the time, and I was starting to see other kids around her age, and I wasn't trying to compare, but you just naturally do. And they were like, oh, that's because she has cerebral palsy. Like the word just kind of throughout. And then I was like, whoa, what is that? Were we monitoring for that? And then they were like, hey, we're going to get you in for a formal diagnosis within 3 months. And I was like, no, now. Because if I go home and I'm contemplating for 3 months and searching, it's
Yeah.
not going to be good. And I know like how scary the world is when you're looking through social media and you're seeing everything. Like you're seeing all different kinds of scenarios. And cerebral palsy really is like, there's such a variety and there's many different kinds. And so I had no idea even which direction to turn. So I was literally seeing all of it. Um, and like not just like movement, but also like
Yeah.
swallow, speech. So there were so many different components that I just didn't know what my situation was going to look like and what Presley's life was going to look like. So once I got that formal diagnosis, I was very in shock. And I did actually like post a blog today about just like reflecting back and when I was doing my reel on Presley and like looking at her for the past 2 years. Like really, I'm new to this whole thing, right? So you've been like in this world in different capacity and for farther long time, but for 2 years looking back, I was like, wow, there has been major shifts, not only like in Presley's life, but also like in my own like meant like where I see things and where I come from and like the things that drive me to do certain things like come live and talk about it. Like I wouldn't have done
Yeah.
that when Presley first got her diagnosis because I just didn't feel comfortable. I feel that way with autism right now. Like she has her autism diagnosis, but I'm just not comfortable enough. I'm not there yet to like discuss because the spectrum is so wide and it's not even like low and high. It's like a
Yeah.
wheel. So it's a whole other thing. But it is like very, very daunting when you first step into that role and when you start to see how ableist our world is. And like that's a whole other topic
Yeah.
you and I am sure could like talk
Yeah.
about for a long time. So when you were younger, when did you realize that your body moved differently, that your body wasn't an able body?
I mean, I think I always knew I was different from like my brothers and from most of the kids that I, grew up around. I grew up in a small town. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
there was one other person with cerebral palsy in my town when I was growing up, but our age is quite different, and the way that our CP presents is quite different as well. And so I did know someone in my community that had CP. Unfortunately, we didn't really build that connection over the years, and that's something I'm kind of regretful of, you know. But yeah, so I kind of think I knew I was different because from 2 years old, I wore braces or AFOs. Um, and so nobody else I knew wore those, right? So I definitely knew I was
Yeah.
different in some way, but I don't think I really understood what disability was at that time, right? And that I actually, yeah, it
That's
was
so
just, I just
young.
thought, okay, I'm different. I didn't really know the understanding of
Yeah.
disability behind it, right? And like really how it would
Hmm.
impact my life in so many ways and just influence my life in so many ways, whether that's like positive or negative things, right? But yeah, I don't know. I would say probably sometime in elementary school, right, is when I really kind of had more of an understanding that, okay, this isn't just like a difference. This is really who I am, right? Like it's my identity. I can't take it away from any part of
Yeah.
me. And I think that's probably when I started going to school, elementary school age, and really being around other kids and seeing what they could do with their bodies and how I kind of had to modify things and maybe just, not do certain things. That's when I really started, I think, to
Hmm.
understand that this was who I was, and it was not going to change no matter what I did, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Like looking at Presley, now that she's getting older, she's very curious. Like she's 4, so she's very curious, and she will ask questions when she sees someone in a wheelchair. So she'll say to me, one time we were in the mall and she saw a wheelchair user, and she said, "Do her legs hurt like mine?" And that's when I realized that maybe she is starting to already kind of notice that her body is not like maybe as functional as other bodies. She
Yeah.
sees me running on the treadmill, and like she she can walk on the treadmill, but not very fast. Like
Yeah.
she sees me doing stairs, so she sees, and I feel like it's like human nature to do the
Hmm.
comparison game. And so she sees other kids, when she's in dance class, like she falls quite a bit in dance class where other kids
Exactly.
don't.
Yeah.
Or even like doing stairs, how
Yeah.
hard she has to work to lift her leg up one step. Um, for me, I think like when I have really a hard time sitting with the fact that my daughter is disabled is when I go to sub at schools. So I'm not subbing full time. I just go in and sub. And when I go outside and I see kids playing effortlessly without like
Yeah.
any kind of
Yeah.
work to do certain movements, then it kind of hits me because I'm like, oh, this, Presley's gonna like probably have difficulties with this, and that's fine. But it kind of makes me sad because that wasn't my experience. I never had trouble moving my body. I grew up very, I'm an able-bodied
Yeah.
person. Um, and I come from a very small town. So we never really had people around us that we had to, you know, like see their perspective or like look at it a different way. Like we never were like grateful for our able body. We
Yeah.
were just like, it just
Yeah. And
is.
I honestly think that
Um,
is like,
yeah,
that hits it on the head, right? Like, that's the perspective that I think most people have is like, this is just what it is. I'm not an able-bodied person. I'm just a person. But then when it comes to somebody
yeah,
that isn't able-bodied, then they get labeled as, okay, you are disabled or you have a disability. But yeah, I think everyone just thinks my body is just how everybody's body is, right? In some ways.
yeah,
And I think, yeah, you're right. When you start noticing the lack, I don't want it to sound bad, but the lack of effort that able-bodied people have to put in to just do whatever they want, right? Like they don't have to think about the movement. They don't have
yeah,
to like try to connect their body, their brain, their muscles all together at the same time. They're not like observing what's going on around them and how that's going to impact what they're doing or what they're trying to do. So it's a lot of effort
yeah,
to just move when you have a body that isn't just able, right? And that's something that I think that's why Presley
Yes.
is noticing more, is because she can actually see that other people can just do things without thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I have to take a step back and not put on
Yeah.
like a feeling sorry for
Yeah.
her, right? Like because I don't want it to be my body's less than, or I'm not as capable. Like I don't want her to think that it's a bad thing, right? So whenever I'm watching these movements and I'm seeing her have difficulties, instead of being like, "Oh, honey, like how was it? Are your legs sore?" Like just
Yeah,
being like, "How was dance
exactly.
class?" Like
Yeah.
it just is for you, and just like so that she can also have like a different maybe
Yeah.
level of acceptance, because I'm sure that that's going to be a journey for her. She's going to be many days that she doesn't, just like anybody who, like for me with body dysmorphia or like history of eating disorders, just like accepting
Yeah.
that it just is what it is and kind of working with it. She's going to have the same kind of journey through her disabled
Yeah.
experience, and then also with her neurodivergent
Exactly.
experience as well. So when you were younger, you had SDR surgery, and I'm going to Vancouver
I'm
next,
so
wait, the
excited for
2nd
you
of
guys.
April. Yes, me, I'm petrified. Yeah, so me, my mom, and my daughter are going to Vancouver to do a consult for SDR surgery. And I believe you were the one who put the bug in
Yeah,
my
I
ear
think we
about
talked
SDR
about it a
surgery.
few
I feel
times.
like
Yeah.
it came from you. And so then I started Googling it, and then I asked Presley's orthopedic surgeon about it, the person who like kind of sees if she needs, her heel cords lengthened or if any kind of surgeries or whatever. And she just said, like, yeah, go for the consult and see what they say and kind of go from there. Um, but Presley is like kind of like the ideal candidate
Hmm.
because of her level. She's more mild, she's movement, she's a very great therapy kid, which is something that they do consider. Um, but the idea behind it is scary, like the actual cutting
Yeah.
of cords in your spine. So, how, yeah, oh my goodness, I
You
need to talk
really
to
do.
Colette
Like, you
about
need
this.
to talk to my mom too, because I mean, this happened to me almost 30 years ago.
she, yeah, and she would be in like literally the same position as I am, right? Like
Yeah.
having to make that decision because I have to make a decision on my daughter's body. It's not her getting to decide, it's me, and
You
we can't
can't.
wait
Yeah.
that many years, right? And so how do you think SDR benefited you? Like, do you think that that made a difference in your pain management, your energy expenditure, the way that you move? Like, what do you think? How did SDR negatively or
Hmm.
positively
Yeah.
affect you?
Well, to start off, just for people that may not know what it is, right? It's
Yes, tell
selective
us.
dorsal rhizotomy surgery, SDR surgery, and it's a spinal surgery, like Paige was saying. So basically, what happens is they cut into a part of your spine where there's nerve bundles located. And they cut the nerves that are causing the spasticity in the muscles. And the spasticity is, for people with spastic diplegia, is really one of the biggest issues that they have with their cerebral palsy in their body is the spastic muscles. So muscle spasms just can be constant, right? Can be very painful, can last a long time. So the SDR surgery really tries to tackle that by cutting the nerves that are causing those signals to be sent to the muscles and to cause that spasticity to happen. Um, and it permanently removes the spasticity signals, right? Because those nerves will never regrow. So it's known as like a life-changing surgery for people with spastic diplegia cerebral palsy in a lot of ways because there are a lot of almost guaranteed benefits to it, right? If you are a really good candidate for it, if you're already walking before you have it done, chances are that it will just improve your ability to move. It will decrease your pain levels. It will just help with everything that goes along with tight muscles. And if you are not walking before you have the surgery, there's a good chance that it will actually help you to be able to walk later on. Or if not, at least to be more mobile and to have a lot less chronic pain. So for me, it definitely was life-changing. I mean, I think I was walking before the surgery.
How
I
old
was
were you when you had your
between
SDR
4 and 5.
surgery?
I can't remember for sure, but I was between 4 and 5, and I
Okay.
did actually have it in
Oh, short.
Alberta. So I grew up, yeah, I grew up
Okay, I
in
thought it
British
was in Saskatchewan.
Columbia. So I was born in Saskatoon just because I was born so early, right? My parents were on holiday. And so I was born in Saskatoon, and spent 3 months there,
Okay.
like at the Ronald
Yeah.
McDonald House NICU, right? And then came to
Hmm.
BC, obviously, where my family was living after that, and grew up in BC. But I had my SCR surgery at the Calgary Children's Hospital, which is now like a different hospital there now, but that's where I had it. And that's where I had a lot of my therapies over the years and surgeries was at the Calgary Children's Hospital. So yeah, I was about 4 or 5,
Okay.
really close to the age that Presley is. Um, and for me, like I was
Yes.
walking before I had it, so we knew that it would just improve my mobility, right? And my ability to walk independently.
Yeah.
Um,
What about like energy expenditure? Like that's one of the main reasons why like Presley's physical therapist right now is like I would highly recommend it because like right now Presley
yeah,
gets tired so fast. So then she wants me to carry
yeah.
her and I'm like, ooh, like trying to keep growing these pipes if
Yeah,
I'm going to
no,
be doing
that's
this.
that's a really good
It's hard.
point to bring up. Like I'm sure that it did impact, my ability to just have more endurance, more stamina, more energy, because I wasn't dealing with the pain and I wasn't dealing with the muscle spasms just constantly happening, right?
Hmm.
Um, so it
Yeah.
improved my mobility for sure. It permanently removed a lot of the spasticity from my legs. Um, and it really just allowed me to have as much mobility and independence that I do now. I definitely think that things would be different if I didn't have that surgery. And it's definitely something that is really recommended for people with spastic diplegia in particular, right? Because of all the benefits that it really
Yeah.
has been proven to show across so many different cases. Hmm.
Right. Yeah. I am like very excited that Presley is like a great fit. Going to a different province for surgery is a little intimidating. Um, and I'm a little bit curious because I'm assuming that the recovery is
Yeah.
different now than it was for you because I'm assuming that the surgery is also a little bit different. It's probably a
Yeah.
little more advanced because you're a little bit old. Just kidding.
Almost
Um,
30 years ago I
so,
had it. I can't
uh,
believe it. Like, yes.
so things have changed. That's the reality. So yeah, I'm a little bit like because we're going to Vancouver for the consult, we'll come home. And then they said within 6 months the surgery will happen. So if they think she's a great fit, yada yada yada, within 6 months we'll be back for the surgery. And then so I guess like me, I'm gonna learn during that consult
Yeah.
is what that recovery
Hmm.
process is going to look like, and what the therapy is going to look like because it will be more therapy. So from what I understand is after SDR surgery is that Presley's brain is going to have to learn how to, instead of using her spasticity that she's been relying on, she's going to have to
Yeah.
rebuild that connection to use her muscles. And that's going to require her to like technically in
Yeah.
some ways relearn how to move her body and connect to her legs and to be mobile. Um, so I think it would probably be the after part that's a little more
Yeah. Yeah.
daunting, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. It's a marathon, right? And having the surgery is just the starting gun of the marathon, right?
The
Yeah, yeah.
gunshot, yeah. Yeah.
I'm not a marathon runner, but you are, I think. But yeah, like
No,
it really is
no,
the
I'm not. Oh
surgery,
my goodness.
it's scary, because your child is having to go and get their spine cut into, but ultimately it's just the start of the marathon of what you need to be doing to make sure that the surgery works, right? Um, and definitely the surgery has changed. I mean, I have quite a big scar on my back, and I believe the scar now is like that big. You know, mine is probably even bigger than that in length. Yeah,
The post on
yeah.
your thing
And
with
I
the photo.
definitely have some difficult memories of, you know, having stitches removed, staples removed, all of that. But I don't believe it's like that
Mm-hmm.
anymore. It's a lot less invasive, right? So
Yeah.
the recovery is a lot quicker, and you are like up and moving and doing therapies as soon as you can, basically. For
Yeah.
me, yeah,
That's what
and
they
like
said.
I had to
Literally.
recover for a while, right? Like I couldn't just get up because the reality was I had staples in my back holding my spine together. And until those were
Yeah.
removed, I really couldn't do much, right? So I believe that has completely changed,
Yeah.
which allows the kids to go into therapy right away. But I had to learn how to walk again. Like I had to learn everything, right? I had to relearn every movement that I had already gained before I had the surgery. And I had to learn, like you said, how to work with my body without the spasticity. And in some ways, the
Mm-hmm.
spasticity helps because it helps you maintain your balance. It, you know, it keeps those muscles tight, right? And when you don't have that anymore, you really
Yes.
have to work on building up your muscles to be able to do those movements again. Hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. So I'm so glad that it was such a positive, like
yeah,
overall positive, right? Experience for you. And I am very excited to learn. I think about like not, you don't compare because everybody's journey is hard and everybody has their different hard, right? Regardless if you're a parent, not a parent, a disabled person, not a disabled person, a medical family, not a medical family, right? But I just like it really like shifts into these families who do have surgery, multiple surgeries and multiple medical procedures, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like those are some really resilient people because, but people who are not parenting a disabled person be like, oh, you're so resilient, and people who are not disabled be
yeah,
like, oh, you're so resilient, right? Like it's just so different. So my last question, because we said we were going to keep it short, but this is such a great conversation, so I'm glad that we're still going. But I am curious, how has CP, um, like, what are the positives that CP has given you in your life, and is your experience um, as an individual, just like as a human, in this human experience? Why are
yeah,
you happy that you're disabled? Because I'm sure there are things that you're like, thank God,
yeah,
you know, I'm
hmm,
disabled because I have learned or I see X, Y, right? I don't
yeah,
love my whole experience as a, um, I don't have this person's
yeah.
comment got me distracted. Happy for you. I believe the nerves will be good. May I know how is the improvement now? Yeah, so
Yeah,
Jasmine had surgery when she was
and it
5,
is something
just
like once
with
you
her
have
fifth
this
birthday.
surgery, it's permanent benefits, right? So, um, that's why you want to have it when you're young, is so that you can have as many benefits from it as possible. Yeah, yeah. But going back to what you were saying, Paige, like I mean my and I can only speak from my experience, right? But I definitely
Yes.
would not want to take away my cerebral palsy at this point in my life. You know, if you talked to me at other points in my life, I might have answered differently, right? But at this point, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just my identity. Like I can't imagine who I would be if I didn't have CP because it's honestly one of the first things that I tell people about myself a lot of times, right? Like, I introduce myself as like, hey, I'm Jasmine and I have CP. Like it's, so I just don't know what it would be like if I couldn't do that, right? Like,
There
I don't
it
know.
is.
And for me,
Yeah.
I've really, for one of the big positives for me is just the way I see the world, I think. I have I have an understanding of people and what they're going through. I can relate to them a little bit more, I think, because I've had a lot of just
Mhm.
unexpected things happen in my life. Even though CP is something I've known I've had for a long time, there's a lot of things that come along with it that you just don't know until it happens to you, right? So
Yeah. You
exactly,
don't know
yeah,
until you
and a
know.
lot of things change as you're an adult.
Yeah.
So I would say over the last 3 years in particular, I've really um, started to learn more about my own journey with CP, right, and really what it means for me. But I have, like, I work as an accessibility officer at the University of Regina here,
Yes.
and I work directly with students with disabilities, a lot of students with CP actually, who need support in their university courses in order to be successful. Because the reality is our
Yeah.
educational institutions are ableist. But I was
Yeah.
able to take my experience with CP and really put that into helping other people. Um, so I live and
Right.
breathe disability, in my personal life, in my professional life. Um, and I
Yes.
don't think,
But I bet that's what makes you so good at your job, right? Because you have you have that perception that other people do not get and would not get unless they have had the
mhm.
experiences that you have had, right? And that's what makes you such a great person. Like you were one of the very first people I connected to um, in this CP journey, and being able to relate to somebody like your experience gives other people the gift of knowing that everything is going to be
Oh,
okay.
yeah, that's so
Um,
nice.
and I really, but that's so true. And I really feel like because of my NICU experience, because of my experience of being a single parent, because of my experience of Presley having cerebral palsy, having autism, I'm able to connect with so many people on
Hmm.
so many different levels. And I'm able to
Yeah.
see gaps that need to be filled. And so, you know, yeah, it's a lot of shit sometimes, but those like gaps that I have had to like look down the hole and be like, holy shit, I can connect with other people who also have that same like
Yeah,
drop feeling. But I can also help, create connection so that it doesn't
exactly.
feel so scary. And
Yeah,
so your CP has given you like it is a gift and it's a
it
whole different
is.
way of
It
seeing the
is.
world.
Yeah. And yeah, I really don't think I would be in the career I am today, really who I am without having it, right? It's everybody in my life, whether you
Mm-hmm.
know me well or not, knows I have CP because I'm just that kind of a person. Yeah,
It's
it
a part of your
truly,
identity.
truly is. It doesn't
Yeah.
bother me when people, like, I want people to ask questions. I want people to say, like, one thing that bothers me that people say a lot is, well, you don't look disabled, or we don't think of you as disabled. But reality is I am, right?
I
So
think
it's okay for
that's
you to
very
say,
difficult to
oh, yeah, I
navigate
can see
sometimes.
that you're maybe walking differently today. Or it's okay to say, like, yeah, we know you're disabled and we know all of these things. That's okay, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a lot of positives over the last few years in particular, I think. And I honestly can't think of a lot of negatives at this point in my life. Yeah.
Yeah. Probably just, and probably a lot of it is frustration in those moments of seeing, the ableist world that we
Exactly.
live in, or maybe like painful experiences, right? Like one thing I'm really hoping that as Presley gets older, that she doesn't have resentment towards her situation. And sometimes I do have resentment towards my situation. Like I really do sometimes think like, why me? Why Presley? Um, but I really hope she she shifts and kind of takes it into your perspective as why
Yeah,
not me,
exactly.
um, right? And also like her being disabled, like breaking the barriers of there's nothing wrong with being disabled. And that's something I've had to learn too, is there's nothing wrong with being disabled. There's nothing wrong with being autistic. It's, you know, the way that it's
Yeah.
perceived. It's the lack of knowledge around it. Um, and it's honestly, people who are aware of it continue to not take action and change. And people who are just like, I'm an able body, you know, the world works great for me. Um, and so yeah, it's definitely, I don't know.
It
This is
is.
a wild journey, and I really hope that Presley, as she gets older, I would love like for you to
Mm-hmm.
connect with her and like for her to see somebody, you know, like as a model. Like I even look at you as a model, and I'm not a disabled person, but like I really hope that Presley has really strong people who are disabled to look up to and see how wonderful their life is and how there's nothing wrong with their body and that
Yeah.
disability isn't a bad thing.
It's
And
just part of human diversity, right? It shouldn't be a surprise to people. It
yeah,
still is in a lot of ways, but it shouldn't be a surprise that we're here, right? And that we're living lives, and whether you know
yeah,
we're disabled or not, we're here, right? So yeah, it's
yes.
I mean, I've lived in this body for 33 years, and I think every other day I learn something
Yeah.
different about disability advocacy, ableism, cerebral palsy. Um, and yeah, it's, I've been every part of the spectrum on my journey, I think. And I know Presley will
Yeah.
will have a lot of hard times, but it's going to make her into who she is, right? And it's already made you into this
Yeah.
amazing advocate. Like you've totally just surpassed me now in the in the advocacy world for sure. You've written a
Oh my
book,
gosh.
you like have these
Far
businesses.
from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
No,
there's
no,
no
you're right.
comparison.
Yeah.
Like the content that you put out, the content that you put out also inspires me to do my work, right? So it's all about just like that community of connection and inspiring one another to, you know, continually drive forward, even though some days you might want to not want to drive forward, right? Like sometimes I struggle with just
Yep.
wanting to be a mom
Yep.
and not wanting to be an advocate in moments. Like if people are staring at my child, I don't always want to be like, do you have
Hmm.
questions? Can I enlighten you? You know, and I understand that that's like a piece of like the journey that I'm on in my position with my child. But
Yeah.
sometimes I just want to be a mom, but that's not my situation.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, I don't know. It's all about community and
Yeah.
relearning, a lot of relearning. And they don't teach you this in school. Nobody prepares you for this. Nobody prepares you that when you're a parent, your child may be disabled, your child may be medically complex, your child may need therapies. Nobody talks about this shit. When I came home and I was like, yo, I got knocked up and I'm going to have a child, nobody
No.
said, by the way, parenting, parenting, yes, everybody said parenting is hard, but
No.
nobody gives you the warning label that on top of parenting, there are going to
Yeah.
be XYZ challenges. And everybody's challenges are different. And it doesn't mean they're good or bad. They just are.
Yeah.
They're just the way that we have to
Yeah.
move through this. And so I just really appreciate that I can connect to somebody and talk to somebody who has not like the same diagnosis, the same, very similar journey, both preemie babies. And so it's really, really, I just love like the kind of bond that we have because I have the
Yeah.
perspective of like parenting, like not parenting you, but like parenting someone who has the same
Yeah.
in some ways as you. And my daughter is going to navigate life very similarly the way that you navigated life, especially as somebody who
Yeah.
looks like she's not
Exactly.
disabled. Um, so it's just really nice to connect, and it's really nice for us to have a conversation and go live and just like, you know, just discuss openly like conversations that are happening that people don't know are happening. And it's not looking for a pity party. It's not saying like you do everything wrong. That's not at all what this is about. It's just about
Yeah.
opening up the conversation
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
kind of getting a different perspective into what the world is like and what navigating
Exactly.
disabilities
Yeah.
is
We
like. So
have I agree. We were connected for some reason because we
yeah,
definitely have
yeah,
very different perspectives and experiences that each of us would never like
For sure.
have vice versa, right? And yeah,
Yes.
it's just it's I think about it all the time, like how similar Presley and I are, and then just the interesting like
It must be so wild
yeah,
for you to watch
it
Presley
is because I
too.
can't remember a lot of, the younger years. I think a lot of people are like that, right? But yeah, it's interesting to watch her because I see
Yes.
myself in her a lot. And it's interesting to get that
Hmm.
perspective from you as the parent because, when I was growing up, I didn't think about what my parents' thoughts and feelings were,
What
right?
Colette might
Yeah,
have been thinking and going
yeah.
through.
So
Yeah.
it's,
Even though I'm sure Colette, you probably thought a little bit differently, but right, it's
yeah,
for Jasmine to see, right, what your perspective was like
yeah,
at a different
yeah,
level. So
exactly. Yeah,
it's
but yeah,
very
we
cool.
could chat forever.
I know. We'll cut her off. We'll say goodbye. But shoot me a
Yeah,
text. Thank you everyone for joining and just like opening up to listening to this conversation. And if you ever need to connect with somebody, me or Jasmine, I'm sure Jasmine's DMs are open too. Make sure you check out her account. She has some really, really great advocacy content around disabilities and ableism and things that you should know about if you don't know about it. And yeah, I'm hoping to start like doing a
yeah,
little more lives, and I'm gonna keep updating about the
yeah,
SDR consult too. So if you want to see what that journey is gonna look like, make sure that you're following Not Your Regular Mom so that you can see what that experience
yeah.
is gonna look
That's
like
going to be
for
really
us.
interesting to see that from start to finish, right? And we'll definitely, if we do some more,
You're gonna go press that little like on my
yeah,
face, you like
yeah,
press page votes.
and
So you don't miss out because it will be super
yeah, it
interesting for
will.
you,
And if we do
especially.
more lives, we can actually, be a little more focused instead of just like chatting because we
Dive
haven't
in.
talked for a while. So,
Yeah, more kind of narrow
yeah,
content I think would be awesome too. So if you're up for like discussing ableism or just SDR or AFOs and
yeah,
all that stuff, you know where to
exactly.
find
Yeah.
me.
All
Okay, well,
right. Have
thank
a
you
good CP
everyone.
day,
Thank you so
everybody.
much, Jasmine. Yes, it's CP Day.
Say
Woohoo!
hi to
It's our next live, you
Presley.
guys. It is National Cerebral Palsy Day. We are
Yeah.
celebrating.
Okay.
I will.
Bye,
Okay.
guys.
Bye.